I might have to call the Cincinnati Bengals the Cincinnati Bungles, since bungle means you handle something clumsily like they have this season. We'll talk about that more here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That's right, it is your team every day here on Locked On NFL, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Welcome to Locked On NFL, where we break down the biggest stories from around the NFL by using the local hosts that know most about the teams that we will be discussing. And today we got my brother Chris Carter in. Carter Critiques from Locked On Steelers. And what we're going to go over is Joe Douglas, a scapegoat. Hell yeah, he is. We're going to talk about Thursday Night Football preview, where the Steelers actually play the Browns with a little bit of a nice addition to the suspense to that game. We'll discuss that. The Lions are on a historic run, but it's not for the reasons that you all talk about the Lions. We'll hit that from the squad shows and what happened to the Bengals with all of those high hopes. Man, we'll figure it out. Chris Carter probably has the answer for us. All right, so today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks, as are all of our crossover shows across the Locked On Podcast Network. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. And also go over and check out Locked On NFL on Amazon Music. That's right, Amazon Music for Locked On NFL. Make sure you do not miss it. Shout out to the everydayers and shout out to the every weekers. My boy, Chris Carter. What's going on, my man? The Bengals. Can you please give me any information that you have and don't just blame it on Lou Anarumo like everybody else does? What happened to Cincinnati?
I think the weaknesses, the chickens came home to roost on their weaknesses. I've been saying for a while, I predict them to finish third in the division behind the Steelers and the Ravens this year. Not behind the Browns, because I saw their collapse happening, but I looked at this Bengals team and I thought, like, they could be competitive because, listen, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, that is a three-headed passing monster. You can't deny that they are a tough team. But the problem is they do not have the structure around them to have a balanced team. Their offensive line is still terrible. Their defense, they did not keep the players they were supposed to. I said years ago, and here's the thing: you want to come for Lou Anarumo. That's the dude he's the reason they ever got to the Super Bowl. You look back at what he did to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in that AFC Championship game. Yep. That's what won them the game. Them shutting down the Chiefs in the second half with great secondary play. They were so prepared. They were taking away the deep ball. They were forcing Pat Mahomes to do things that he wasn't used to at the time, and that was led by Von Bell and Jesse Bates. Doing great work at the safety position. And I said years ago, when they let go of Jesse Bates, I'm like, that's going to cost them because he's much more important than people want to admit. And what's happening here is the Bengals were a team that was, I said it when they were doing, I'm like, they better strike now because I don't think they have the overall organizational integrity to be able to keep this up when they have to pay Joe Burrow and they have to pay Jamar Chase. They had both of those guys on rookie deals. They had T. Higgins on a rookie deal, and it was wonderful because then you could throw all your money into everything else. And now you got to pay them dudes. So now you can't throw all your money into everything else. And you're hoping that all your draft picks on defense work out and all your draft picks in the offensive line work out and all your free agent signings that you signed for reasonable money and not big money can work out. And they're just not. And listen, there's guys like Trey Hendrickson who's leading the NFL in sacks, and he's doing an awesome job. But when you look at all the problems that they have, it's things that were very foreseeable that they would have. And it's why I said, you know what? I don't think that team's going to do too well this year. I know everyone was like, oh, every time they win a game this year, everyone's like, oh, see, they can do it. They're coming. And I'm like, yeah, but they beat the Panthers and they beat the Raiders and they beat the Giants. Like, let me know when they beat somebody. And I said, like, hey, if they can, and listen, they've been in some of those games, but they haven't finished because they're not a well-coached team. Zach Taylor isn't a good coach. I think Lou Anarumo is a good defensive coordinator. Zach Taylor's the person that should be wearing a lot of the shame for this. And it also starts up from the top. I don't think the Bengals are a good organization. I think they've gotten hot because they've had some really, really, really high draft picks and some really good moments. So when Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase just happen to be the guys. But they haven't capitalized on it, and it's going to come back to bite them in the long run. I think it's already starting to bite them.
You put out some gold out there, and you don't need validation, but I am going to confirm some things you said. But first, we're going to listen to the AFC Squad show about the Bengals, and then we'll finish up talking about the Bengals.
Let's talk about Dolphins-Chargers game, and then obviously we'll take a look at the tail of the tape here through the AFC point differential.
Man, I loved what I saw in that Chargers-Bengals game. I mean, you thought that, Bengals were done, that this was their year, and the Chargers get out to that huge lead, and, the Cincinnati defense. We talked about that last week on the show. It's like that Cincinnati defense, Joe Burrow's so good, and Jamar Chase is so good, and they get T. Higgins back, but the defense is just so bad. And the Chargers get out to that huge lead, and then Joe Burrow does what Joe Burrow does. He gets the Chase connection going, the Higgins connection going. And then it felt like no one wanted to win the game at the end. It just felt like, no, you take it. No, you take it. No, you take it. Like, it felt like no one wanted to win it. And then finally, J.K. Dobbins said, all right, fine. If you really want us to win this, I'll go and win it for you. And he had that huge touchdown run, and the Bengals couldn't seal the deal at the end. Look, I think that this essentially sinks the Bengals. I know we were kind of talking about they have to win out if they want to even have a shot at the 7th seed. And I don't really think that's going to go and happen, but
I don't think it's going to happen anyway. I'm going to piggyback on something you said, and I'll add a little bit to it. Jesse Bates, I was in camp 7-8 years ago, and somebody told me, a scout, one of the scouts for the team said, it's hard to find free safeties, man, who can play single high. It's hard to find a great player who's a quarterback. It's hard to find Earl Thomas. Everybody's been trying to find Earl Thomas, but they don't realize it's not just, okay, just pick a safety and he becomes Earl Thomas. No, Earl Thomas is Earl Thomas. Ed Reed is Ed Reed. Jesse Bates is Jesse Bates. Joe Mixon also falls into this because I know people devalue running backs, especially the ones you've had for a long time on your team. He is a difference maker, and they had no plan. They had no plan for two great players. They had no plan, in my opinion. I think they probably did draft Daxton Hill, but Daxton Hill ain't the same type of player that Jesse Bates is. And while everybody wants to blame the defense, I blame it on a mentality of not being – it's just like teams that can't start slow. I mean, that start slow and can't get off to good starts. The Bengals are fine until the end of the game comes, and then it's almost all of a sudden it's like, oh, my God, we did it again.
You need a defense. And listen, what have we been talking about on this show for months now? About teams adjusting to the new direction of the NFL that isn't all about pass, throw, sling. That's what the Bengals, they still want to be that way. And that's fine. But even the Chiefs have adapted to get away from that. The Lions are playing well, not because they're not having to do that all the time. The Ravens, they want to be able to throw the ball, but they're balanced. They run the ball. The Steelers, that's why the Steelers have passed up the Bengals. They because they're like, hey, we're running the football, we're playing great defense. And I said this the past couple of years. If the Steelers just had competent quarterback play, they always would have been better than the Bengals. That's been the big thing that's been holding back the Steelers, is that they were at the end of Ben Roethlisberger's contract. They had to offload a lot of older guys, but even in the midst of that, you didn't see the Steelers fall off. You saw them just kind of, hey, hover right above 500. Make the playoffs. I think they missed the playoffs once in the last 4 seasons, the last 5 seasons,
and they didn't have a losing record when that happened. They didn't have a losing record, right?
Exactly, and it's about good coaching. It's about drafting well across the board, not just needing super duper high picks because you were terrible for so many years. And I think that's where the Bengals, the chickens are coming home to roost on them. Is that they wanted to embrace that new wave of the passing offense, and they didn't look around the league and say, hey, wait a minute. All the defenses are getting smaller. They're getting quicker. They're getting faster. We need to bulk up. We need to be able to run the football. They let go Joe Mixon, and now that and they never developed that offensive line. They tried to. They've had some bad picks up front, and now here they are paying the piper. I didn't think the Bengals would be this bad this year, but I thought they'd be third place in the AFC North, and that's where they are right now.
Yeah, and I can't argue with that. I thought third place in the North in the AFC would be like third place in the North in the NFC, where that's a good team in Minnesota, but it hasn't turned out that way because it's all on the Bengals. Look, they got 3 of the 4 biggest offensive linemen, maybe 3 of the 5. I think the guy in Philly and probably Mekhi Becton is the only 2 guys that can crack the top 5 with all of those big dudes, with the Baby Zeus and Marius Mims, and they just got a big offensive line, but big doesn't always mean better in terms of blocking and winning games. We're going to get to the Steelers a little bit later, but we got a pit stop to make in Detroit prior to that. And We're also going to discuss some other things. Joe Douglas. We'll get to all of that here on a Thursday edition of Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Bilt Rewards. That is BILT. Listen up, renters. If you ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air, it's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Bilt Rewards comes in. Real talk, we've all been there, feeling like we're burning cash and those rent checks. It's frustrating, right? But here's the deal. Bilt Rewards has figured out a way to make rent more rewarding. Say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to renters revolution with Bilt. Bilt is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent every month. When you pay your rent, watch the Bilt points roll in. You can use the points to go on a dream vacation, get yourself on a jet, go to a real nice hotel, and fly there on a real nice airline. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbilt.com/lockedon NFL. That's joinbilt.com/lockedon. Make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbilt.com/lockedon NFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. And today's show is also sponsored by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and you can do it all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. Woo! If you win your first $5 bet. Now, you got to win, but you'll get those $150 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Running it down with my guy, Chris Carter, here on Locked On NFL. Lots to discuss here. One team we're going to discuss is the Lions, and I'm going to do it a little bit different way. Everybody knows the Lions right now are everybody's favorite to win it. I'm always scared when teams become everybody's favorite to win it, right? But they do. They look very, very good. The only team I know can throw 5 interceptions and still win. That's amazing that they did that. And it was against a playoff team. But Detroit, when you think about them, you think about toughness. You think about biting kneecaps. You think about them running the football. You think about them flying around on defense like their hair's on fire and they got 13 people on the field. You don't think about offense, historic offense. Listen to this about point differential, and guess who they compare them to? Check this out.
Moving on from week 11 into week 12 in the NFC, and I'm pretty sure the Detroit Lions just scored again. It's time for NFC squad. The Detroit Lions are kicking a lot of butt. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the only team that can claim victory over the Detroit Lions this season, and that victory over the Lions looks very, very far away compared to what's been happening with the Lions. Even after losing Aiden Hutchinson, their star pass rusher, they're on pace, ladies and gentlemen, to have a plus 270 scoring differential this NFL season. If they accomplish that, that would be the 5th highest all time. It'd be the highest the NFL has seen since the 2007 New England Patriots, who had a plus 315, pretty good offense over there, and the highest in the NFC since the 1999 Rams.
Greatest show on turf. That's some good company. It's just not what you think about when you think about the Lions, and I think that's a credit to Dan Campbell and the crew.
It is. I mean, and you look at how they've built this roster. They built it with the offensive line. They did the things the Bengals didn't. They got it right on the O line. They said, "Hey, let's make sure we are one of the more physical teams in the NFL." And the reason why people don't think, "Oh, I don't think about the offense," I do, because you know what? Great offense ain't just about being flashy. It ain't just about being fast. It's about being strong. It's about controlling the clock. It's about finding a way to move the ball consistently. And that's what the Lions do extremely well. You look at how they're scoring their points right now. they're running the football, and then it's setting up the pass. That's what's so awesome about it, is that they're able to control the line of scrimmage, and that lets Gibbs and Montgomery to go off. And then Jared Goff doesn't have to throw the ball, 500 yards a game. He can just take what's there, be a solid, timely quarterback, and that's what was going to win you a lot of football games in today's NFL. And they're playing the way you're supposed to. I know a lot of people are on the Lions bandwagon now, but if you read the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where I write every single day, I in my season preview, I picked them to win the Super Bowl way back in August. So I made that call back then, and I was like, look, I think this team's got a lot of things going for them right now. They run the football well. They have a defense that's ramping up. They have a good quarterback in Jared Goff, who's able to just distribute the football. Again, you don't need to be Patrick Mahomes in his prime. You don't need to be Josh Allen, who can just shake off 3 dudes and throw a 50-yard bomb. You need to be able to understand where defenses are coming from, get the football out quick, get it to your playmakers, have playmakers to get it to, and have an O-line that's going to keep you upright. And he has all of those things in spades in this Lions offense.
He does. I got a dream matchup, and I'm glad that this is unrehearsed, because you said you picked them to go to the Super Bowl and win it, right, early in the year. I got a dream matchup. I think I'm a boxing guy. I'm always into, this guy looks so good against all these people, but there's just one dude. We always say there's just this one dude like Roy Jones and Antonio Tarver and the late, great Vernon Forrest, how he just owned Shane Mosley. On both of those were amateurs. They beat them when they were kids, and then they beat them again when they were adults. Here's my matchup for them. Pittsburgh. And I'm going to tell you why. Because that'll put you in a situation where if you pick them to win the Super Bowl, people going to bookmark it if they go and play the Steelers. Here's why. Penei Sewell, to me, is their best player. He'd be lined right up against T.J. Watt. That's 2 of the greatest players in NFL history. One-on-one all day long. Amon-Ra St. Brown reminds me of Hines Ward. Who knows Hines Ward better than Pittsburgh, right? They love to impose their will on you. The Steelers ain't scared of nobody. And then on defense, they want you to sit back there and be trying to throw the ball all around the field. Pittsburgh ain't going to do that. I think it is the dream matchup for me. Give me your opinion.
I think it would be an awesome fight between these two teams, because I think the Lions play the way the Steelers are working towards playing. The Penei Sewell, he's been developed over the years. He's also a super duper high pick that the Steelers don't normally get. Frank Ragnow has worked at center. The Steelers really like Zach Frazier. The Steelers are hoping that they can get a Penei Sewell out of Troy Fautanu whenever he gets back from injury, because he's been on IR basically all season. But the Steelers, they've been trying to build that offensive line for the future. They've been adding their playmakers where they can on offense. Sam Laporta is the guy for the Lions at tight end. The Steelers got Pat Frymuth. They just paid him. Darnell Washington's coming on this year. You look at the defenses, I think the Steelers might have the edge up the middle, and without Aiden Hutchinson, they definitely have the edge on the edge. But linebackers, Jack Campbell's been good for the Lions. The Steelers have paid for Patrick Queen, and now they've had Peyton Wilson making crazy interceptions on Lamar Jackson. Yeah. I think this would be a really good matchup. I think that Brian Branch has certainly been another boost for the Lions, just like Joey Porter has been a boost for the Steelers. So I look at these teams. I do think this would be a really good matchup. Now I will say this: I think the Steelers play. The Steelers are playing to get to where the Lions are offensively. The Lions are already there. However, the one thing I think the Steelers could do is I think their defense would be better in this game than the Lions' defense. And that would make this a really interesting matchup. Which unit controlled the pace of the day if these two were to clash? That would be an awesome fight. Shout out to my friends Jamie and Alexa. They're big Lions fans I went to law school with and hung out with back in the day. And they were talking with that, Chris, if the Steelers get to the Super Bowl, I swear to God, you better not root for them, because we just want one. We just want one. And I'm just like, I feel you. I feel you. It would be pretty terrible for Detroit if they couldn't get one and the Steelers got their 7th Super Bowl, most in NFL history. But I do think that'd be an interesting matchup. But I also think stylistically, because you brought up boxing, style makes fights.
Yep.
If the Bills go into the Super Bowl, going to New Orleans, when they take on the Lions in that big matchup with Josh Allen and how they play ball, how do you think that would go in the Super Bowl? Because you were talking about they got to win playoff games, they got to get to the Super Bowl. But to me, this is one of the Bills' last chances with this current crew. They a lot of their guys are starting to get older. Josh Allen will be around, but they're loading up this year to be able to make this run. I think if these two teams were clashed, that would be the interesting, because the Bills are a team that's built entirely around their quarterback, that's built around having Josh Allen just be Superman half the time. The Lions are the team that's built the complete roster that combats that. And I think it'd be very interesting to see which side came out on top if those two teams were to meet as well.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, you mentioned law school. There's a word called precedence. When I was little, I was watching the OJ trial. They kept talking about precedence. That means something that happened before that is now a rule in law because some judge made it that way, and now we always refer back to it. I don't know if that's the real definition, but that's kind of it, right? So here's precedence. The Bills don't win in the playoffs. Listen to the Squad show talk about what they have to do.
The Buffalo Bills slayed the dragon, but can they do it twice? Welcome in to the AFC Squad. The Kansas City Chiefs undefeated streak is officially over. The Buffalo Bills winning a little bit of a thriller there late. Josh Allen on 4th and 2, taking matters into his own hands and punching in for a touchdown. And finally, the Chiefs, they've fallen. And I think the bigger question we're going to have here, folks, is, okay, Joe Marino of Locked On Bills said it last week. It doesn't matter about the regular season. It matters about the postseason, which is true. But somebody had to end the Chiefs streak, and luckily it was Buffalo. Let's start things off here with Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. Zach, your thoughts on obviously Buffalo ending the streak there? How important is it? And do you agree with Joe that really, hey, got to find a way to do it in the postseason?
I mean, we've seen Buffalo do this the last couple times they've played in the regular season against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they've typically been the better team in the regular season matchup with the Chiefs, even when the Chiefs have been playing their best football in the regular season. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great win. Obviously, you want to celebrate a great regular season win, beating the Kansas City Chiefs, back-to-back Super Bowl champs who were undefeated coming into this game. Obviously, it's a great win, but like Joe said, it's about the playoffs. I mean, Josh Allen's been doing this at such a high level for so.
Yeah, so, when somebody loses weight, Chris, I ain't saying good because you used to be fat. I'm glad you lost weight. I'm going to give them grace. I'm going to give them a little chance to enjoy this win, but people are right, and they do have to show it, but you can't show it in the playoffs unless you position yourself and get there, and that's what Buffalo's done.
Yeah, and listen, this is why I often tell people, like, when it comes to the playoffs and saying, oh, they got to do it in the playoffs. Listen, yes, they do have to do it in the playoffs. That's how you get to see it, but it's why the NFL, I think, is so watched sometimes. When you get to the playoff, it's down to one game. One quarter can ruin an entire great season where another team just catches you in a matchup that dictates the pace of that game. And then all of a sudden, you're sitting there saying, wait a minute, what happened? We were the best team in football for 18 weeks. Yep. And now we can't get a first down in this quarter because this other team's just running this defense that we weren't ready for. Whereas, you go to the NBA, you could beat, Jokic and LeBron or you could beat a team twice in a row, and it don't matter because if they're coming back to their house in the next game, they can tie it up in 2 games. And all of a sudden you played 4 games and it's still a 2-2 series. The same thing goes for hockey. Same thing goes for baseball. You cannot do that in football. And that is why when we talk about playoff success, it comes down to who's healthy, who just had a great moment. And you look at the games that they've lost in the playoffs, with Josh Allen. Their first one, they lost 22-19 to the Texans, a close one back when Deshaun Watson was playing well for the Texans. That was their first foray. They got to the AFC Championship the next year when they lost to the Chiefs in 38-24. Then they met the Chiefs again, and they lost to the Chiefs when they got 13 seconds on the clock to extend their the game into overtime in that one. Two tough times losing to Patrick Mahomes. Then they lost to Joe Burrow, and the Bengals got smoked there. Then they lost last year again to the Chiefs by 3 points. It's just been thing after thing after thing. And for Josh Allen, I do feel like his legacy is, if you want to be known as one of the best quarterbacks of all time, you have to at some point be the best quarterback in the NFL and not lose to Mahomes or Burrow or Lamar Jackson or whoever you're going to lose to. Because that's the other thing is that, we're talking to everyone's thinking, oh, well, they beat the Chiefs. The Bills, if I'm the Bills, I'm worried if I win that top seed and I have to match up with the Ravens. They have a great record right now, but the Ravens dogged them 35-10. Styles make fights, and I think the Ravens have a style that plagues the Bills. And if I'm the Bills, I got to be ready to have a better performance against them. They also lost to the Texans this year. I do think the Bills have a chance. I think the Bills are dangerous, but. And like I said, I think they'd be an awesome matchup to watch against the Lions. Two cities, 2 franchises looking for their first Super Bowl that are on historic that are on paces, great paces right now. But part of it's also igniting. And it's funny; those 2 teams will also meet the week before Christmas, and so that'll be awesome to watch. But again, I look at how the Bills have played. I think they deserve credit for it. But if they get to the playoffs and let's say the Ravens just have their number in this game, I don't think it diminishes what Sean McDermott is as a coach. I don't think it diminishes Josh Allen as a quarterback. But it's gonna be one of those things where people will try to define their entire careers based off of not being able to quote unquote win the big one.
Yep. Peyton Manning won one Super Bowl while with the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
Drew Brees won one Super Bowl in his entire career. Brett Favre won one Super Bowl in his entire career. Two of those guys did it extremely late in their career. Sometimes I think we're getting a little bit too much of a hurry, and it kind of clouds what we see. All right, we're going to go around. We're going to talk about Thursday Night Football and let Chris talk about that a little bit because his team plays tonight, the team that he covers. And then we're going to listen to the squad shows, Peacock and Williamson talk about Joe Douglas, some very interesting comments. We'll do that in the third final segment here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp, man, is there for you if you are considering therapy. Therapy, it can be super, super important. And this month, it's all about gratitude. And along with the person that you love, there are people that we don't get to thank enough. And sometimes that's yourself. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sure of everything. And in this crazy world, that definitely is not easy. Man, do I know. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Sometimes it's hard to get back on your square. BetterHelp can let you do that. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Rolling along on Locked On NFL. Everybody knows the big news earlier this week was, big news for the last month or so has been Aaron Rodgers and that foolishness that he's got going on up in New York. But Joe Douglas was let go to GM the other day. I understand it. I get it. But that doesn't mean that man didn't do a good job. Listen to Peacock and Williamson, Matt Williamson in particular, talk about Joe Douglas and what he did manage to accomplish in New York.
The two massive moves that sure don't look good, and one of them already was terrible, is taking Zach Wilson second overall and the Aaron Rodgers endeavor, going down that road. But no way are those two decisions with the second overall pick and going to get Aaron Rodgers, Joe Douglas alone. No way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know if he had final say. I'm sure he didn't. He may not even like Zach Wilson. You know what I mean? Like, so that aside, if you look at his drafts, and I'm not going to harp on the rookie class, but Will McDonald is racking up sacks left and right. Joe Tippmann is turning into a high-quality center. Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, they all speak for themselves. Jermaine Johnson was really promising before he got hurt. Elijah Vera Tucker. Elijah Moore, he's not with the team, but I get it. You know what I mean? Like, he's drafted well.
Quentin Williams.
Yeah, right. I know Becton didn't work out, but that's a really good hit rate. And I know a lot of those are early picks and you should hit on them, but they're some of the best players at their position. And he has a scouting background. When you hired him, you knew that was his forte, was he's going to be the tape grinder type GM. He's not a penny pitcher or whatever. And he's finding good players in the draft.
It's wild, man, that when you're going through the building process, everybody has input. But when things go wrong, only one person usually gets fired. And in this case, it's two. And they might have got rid of the wrong cargo. Robert Saleh might have got fired and actually had his profile go up with the way the Jets have played once they let him go.
Yeah, I think we can all admit that they were they kind of had an issue with that. You saw that the Jets were pushing him out so fast. Robert Saleh, I think everyone even saw at the time, like that's Aaron Rodgers. That's not. And the fact that also like the classlessness of the organization to escort him out the building and not let him get to address his team, I still have just such a problem with that. But I look at this and Joe Douglas. This is someone falling on their sword because the Jets were bad, because the Jets didn't work out, and shocker, because I'm sitting here and I could see from a mile away. I'm like, hey, that don't look too great. Like,
Nope.
I'm not so sure that all those things mesh the way that you want them to mesh. This isn't Madden where you can add a 90 overall quarterback and just hope that it works out and say like, well, I got this guy who can sling the ball. No, you need chemistry. You need to build towards something. And Robert Saleh, I think, was building something. I don't think Joe Douglas was building towards something. To Matt's point, you can't hit on all your draft picks. No one ever does. You go back and look at how many Bill Belichick draft picks didn't work out for the Patriots, but you know what? They hit on enough of them to build around. And I think they've done that. Like, Brian brought up Quinnen Williams. That was his first round draft pick, third overall. And he's played very well. Now, yes, they've had misses. Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims, Zach Wilson. That was a pretty dark, 2-year stretch right there. But like you said, Elijah Vera Tucker has worked out. Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson have worked out. Will McDonald, Joe Tippmann are working out. And then we still got to see how this rookie class works out with Fashanu and Corley and those guys. But there was something building here for the Jets, and it's why I always throw caution to people that want to get free agent happy, that want to say, hey, let's go sign all these people. Let's just do all this, change our entire thing around this 2 players here. And really for them, it was just 1 player, because that's what happens. You risk your organizational integrity. And the Jets were trying to build some. That's the other thing. The Jets didn't have that. The Jets have been a terrible organization for you and I's entire lives, Tony.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like, you got to Joe Namath is still the all-time leading passer of the New York Jets. And it's just like, they were building a defensive run-first team like the rest of the NFL wanted to, and then you said, you know what? Let's throw caution to the wind. Let's go get this big-time quarterback, pay him a whole bunch of money. Let's go trade for Devontae. Let's do all these things to appease this one guy because we want to make our entire organization about him. And look what you've done. You then thrown away the identity that Robert Saleh was building you towards, the identity that some of the best teams in the NFL are embracing right now. You think of the Lions, you think of the Chiefs, you think of the Steelers. You had that opportunity to be one of those teams, and you threw it away. And now you're saying Joe Douglas is at fault. And to Matt's point, I doubt that was all Joe Douglas making that call right there. I have a feeling that it's probably the ownership that stepped in a minute. But like you said, somebody got to fall on their sword, and it's never the people that own the means of production.
No, it's not. Real quick, y'all played Cleveland tonight. That means a lot to the people in that region, regardless of the fact that it's 8-2 versus 2-8. Any surprises in the trap game?
Well, one thing I've been cautioning people about is like, look, in the entire, you want to talk about a team with organization, with organizational integrity. The Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the shining examples of that.
No doubt.
But in all their time, the Steelers are 0-7 on Thursday Night Football when they're on the road facing a divisional opponent all time. And under Mike Tomlin, that's 0-5. It is tough to go on the road in the AFC North and to win on a short week. It is something that's been a challenge for them. And even though the Browns are down and out, they've been playing terribly. I think this is going to be a close football game. I think it won't be like, I don't think it'll be a 1-point, 2-point game. It comes down to a 2-point conversion. I do think the Steelers will win this game, but I think this is going to be one of those games where a lot of crazy things happen because, again, short week leads to less prep time. We talked to Mike Tomlin on Monday this week, right after the Steelers beat the Ravens. He said, hey, I haven't even looked at the Ravens tape. I've just been looking at Browns tape, and that's what, Cam Hayward, we talked about him this week. The Steelers are focused. The Steelers also haven't won in Cleveland since 2021. And granted, that's because they've had Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett playing quarterback in those games, and they've been at Cleveland. It's just been 2 games there, but they know the tall task here. So this is not a walk-in Steelers just round them up and just keep it moving type of game. This is going to be a tough game because these 2 teams know each other. These 2 teams have played each other a lot. These 2 teams don't like each other. And even though the Browns have been terrible, they're going to be getting up for the Steelers because they want to be able to make some noise against their rivals. They want to play spoiler here. I mean, look at it this way too. If the Steelers win this game, it will clinch Mike Tomlin's 18th consecutive non-losing season.
Unreal.
Because they will have 9 wins in this 17-game season. It will simultaneously clinch the Browns to have their 18th losing season in the last 21 years. So the Browns, they don't want that to happen on their turf. They want to make sure it works. The fans don't want that to happen. I think this is going to be a loud, ruckus environment that gets a little crazy.
I do too, and I can't look forward to it. We'll see the action. Chris Carter has a busy day. Make sure you travel safe, my brother, and make sure y'all tap into Locked On NFL tomorrow morning to listen to Tyler Rowland. He'll hit you with a double shot of espresso early in the morning with all of the stories, the biggest stories from around the league by the use of local experts, and then I'll be right here in the barbershop again tomorrow. Make sure y'all take care here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for joining us. Take care of each other. We'll do the same.